It's probably hard to believe it if you weren't there, but there was a time where Rockstar Games used to be known as the industry underdogs. They were the hip, trend-setting publisher, unafraid to publish games with risque and controversial material. But of course, like most real-life Rockstars, that edge of theirs started to dull once they became overnight millionaires. Most people attribute their overnight success to Grand Theft Auto and its developers Rockstar North, and while that's kinda true, I always felt that Rockstar San Diego was their best studio. Prior to being acquired by Rockstar in 2002, they were known as Angel Studios, a special effects company founded by Diego Angel in 1984, specializing in CGI. They got their start doing works for some movies and music videos like The Lawnmower Man, but would eventually transition to the gaming industry in the mid-90s. Working closely with some of the major players of the time, Angel had quickly established themselves as developers on the cutting edge with their impossible port of Resident Evil 2 to the N64, and their work with Microsoft on Midtown Madness, the pioneer of the modern-day open-world racer. But this video is focused on Angel Studios of the year 2000, probably their biggest year ever, with not one, not two, but 3 games. So in this video, let's take a look at how these 3 titles hold up today and how they influence each other in Angel Studios going forward. Midtown Madness 2 released in September of 2000 exclusively for Windows PCs. Before Project Gotham and Forza, the Madness series were Microsoft's lineup of arcade racing games from outside developers. In addition to Midtown Madness, there was Monster Truck Madness from Terminal Reality and Motocross Madness from Rainbow Studios. Getting Midtown 2 to even start on Windows 10 was a grueling nightmare due to the game's dependency on DirectX 7, which was exclusive to Windows 98 and ME. I had tried all sorts of fixes and alternatives, but overall they all had kind of mixed results and different weird trade-offs like poor performance, broken HUD elements, and more. I had settled with running the game in PCEM, a program that emulates a wide range of old and obscure PCs, but stumbled upon a YouTube video that had a portable installation with files that I assume were modified to work on Windows 10. When I downloaded and extracted it, it started up right out the box with not many problems other than the audio and sound effects being missing. I replaced those files with ones from the game's disk and they came back. So to save people in the future some major headaches, I've uploaded my installation and linked it below. Please let me know if that actually works on your machine. So, onto the game itself. Now, to put it simply, Midtown Madness 2 is a lot of fun. I mostly play sim racers these days, very serious games with a strong focus on realism. So spending time with something that's just unrestrained, wacky chaos is pretty refreshing. Like the first game, Midtown 2 takes place across scaled-down recreations of real-life cities. In this case, there's San Francisco and London. You can cruise around the city, do races, or test your driving skills and your patience in the crash courses. While it might not have as many cars as its contemporaries, like Need for Speed, I think it makes up for that with a lot of variety. From the VW Beetle to the Pinot's Roadster, from city buses and military APCs, this game's got an eclectic selection of vehicles to drive, and even more thanks to a modding community that's surprisingly still active today. The source of what makes this game very fun, and occasionally frustrating, is the fast and loose physics. Now, I've played a lot of arcade racing games over the years, but I cannot think of a single one that comes close to the almost weightlessness the cars in Midtown 2 have. I cannot stress enough how easy it is to topple over and be toppled over by other cars if you even so much as scrape them. This is mostly not a problem, but it does become a huge annoyance when you get to the harder races and crash course challenges, which require more skilled, more precise driving. I actually haven't made much progress in the crash course mode because both the London Cab and the Mustang Fastback suck to drive and cannot be changed. I was pretty fond of the Mustang GT at the start due to its high speed, but I noticed that it wasn't very hard for it to flip over and start flying like an eagle. Though I guess if you want the experience of crashing your Mustang into everything and driving into crowds, well, I can't think of a game that does it better than Midtown 2. It is warm weather season after all. As for the other cars, it's kind of a mixed bag. They're either too slow or too difficult to control. The Audi TT is probably the best car in the whole game, and I'm not sure if that's because it's featured on the box art. The durability isn't great, but it is very fast, and it does stay to the ground most of the time. You do, however, have to unlock it first by coming in first on half of the San Francisco checkpoint races, so you get the game, get on that ASAP, trust me. Another pet peeve of mine is that everything about the San Francisco map. Now, I know that San Fran is famous for its steep roads and hills, but when the physics make everything but the buses and trucks so light, and most cars having very low-ish durability, it means you're going to be flying and crashing a lot on this map, more so than the London map. That said, cruise mode is really where it's at, the real star of the show, I think, as it allows you to drive around the cities on your own terms and set how much traffic, pedestrians, and police you want. If you were playing on period-appropriate hardware, these settings would need to be adjusted based on how well your computer can handle it. But since I don't have that limitation, I like to crank everything to max, as anything lower feels a little odd. I think cities and games should feel very crowded and bustling, and turning those settings up achieves that feeling very well. Even though the physics system can be a little annoying during races, it is very just perfect for the unhinged nature of this mode. Nothing really gets the blood pumping harder than juking cops while plowing through parked cars like they're nothing. I haven't played the first game, but it seems a lot of people think of Midtown 2 as more of an expansion pack than a proper sequel, which is probably true given that they were only released a year apart and seem to have the same cars. I'm curious to see how Midtown Madness 3 turned out, which was an Xbox exclusive that came out years later and was developed by a different studio, DICE. Yes, that DICE. Maybe a topic for another video? I don't know, we'll see. Just 1 month later, in October of 2000, Sony would release their hotly anticipated PlayStation 2 in North America. Of the 28 games available at launch, 2 of them came from Angel Studios. Both Midnight Club and Smugglers Run continue the open-world driving aspect of the Midtown games, but with some slight twists. Smugglers Run ditches the city streets for rocky off-road terrain and gang wars, while Midnight Club, on the other hand, sticks to the big cities but swaps the cartoony, whimsical nature of Midtown for a stronger theming on underground street racing and tricked out import cars. If you've played Crazy Taxi before, then the core gameplay of Smugglers Run is pretty similar. You drive around the map to pick up and drop off contraband while racing against a tight time limit. For the first few levels, this is actually a pretty fun concept, but the cracks start appearing very fast once the difficulty starts ramping up. Due to the off-road nature of the game, you'll be bouncing and rocking around in your buggy and SUV, but like the San Francisco map in Midtown 2, it's stupidly easy to lose control of your vehicle, and you'll be spending more time fighting the bland environments than actually racing to your objective. It doesn't help that you also get slightly penalized if your car takes a bit of damage. And if that wasn't enough, you have to deal with the most hyper-aggressive police AI I have ever seen in a video game. It's almost on par with like 4-star and above police chases from GTA, but instead of gradually building towards the insanity like GTA, it just hits the ground running. The cops will always be chasing you, they will always be on your routes, you cannot avoid them, and they will do whatever they can to crash, bash, T-bone, and pile on top of you. Yeah, it's a bit much. I gave up on this game around mission 11 because it was just becoming too annoying to deal with, and of course I had other games to cover in this video. But I guess it isn't all terrible. There is one side mode that I really liked, and it kind of feels like a proto-Rocket League. There are two teams, you and a rival gang, and you have to compete to get a certain amount of contraband delivered to your drop-off point. If someone on the opposing team takes the cargo, you can hunt them down and smash into them to take it. You can also similarly pass the cargo to your team AI by nudging them a bit. And this is kind of recommended because team AI, they're actually pretty good. They're pretty smart. The cops do show up, but they can also aggro on opposing members, taking some of the heat off of you, and it's kind of funny to watch. It isn't perfect, but it is fun, which is something other missions in the game kind of lacked. The Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition is the most popular entry in the series, and it's where a lot of people, myself included, had jumped in on. So, going back and playing the very first game for the very first time was pretty interesting. It definitely feels like Angel Studios wanted to make a legally distinct Midtown Madness game, as it has many of the same elements and features, but retooled for consoles. Like Midtown 2, Midnight Club has two cities, New York City and London. However, Midnight Club's version of London is a lot denser than the one found in Midtown 2. Instead of the wacky commentators, rivals will throw smack talk at you based on your performance.
I thought you were terrible, bye-bye!
You reckon you got a chance against the king of queens?
All races are based on the waypoint modes from the Midtown games, where you have to run through checkpoints to get to the finish line, though I think the checkpoints are a lot more generous and give you a little more leeway if you miss them. There's plenty of traffic and pedestrians around, but this time you can actually run them over. There aren't any licensed cars, but it does have licensed music from underground electronic labels like Moving Shadow and Transmat Records. I guess it seems like weird priorities for a street racing game to have licensed songs over licensed cars, but I don't think Derek May would have asked for nearly as much money as Toyota or Ford. And it's always nice to hear Detroit techno in a video game. You don't really see that often. You start the career mode in New York City and move up the ranks by finding rivals roaming the streets and challenging them to a race. It sounds easy enough, but unfortunately, it's a very drawn out and tedious process to do something that is effortless in pretty much any other racing game I've played. When you find a rival, you have to get their attention by tailgating them until the marker is yellow. While it's yellow, you have to keep close to them, otherwise they'll go back to their normal roaming state and you'll have to start the process all over again. Since the rivals have a set roaming path, I think it's easier to just wait somewhere on their route and then just start driving as they approach you instead of chasing them around. After that period is over, their marker will turn green and they will drive off to wherever the race location is. And I think this is the real problem here. You don't get a waypoint to tell you where the destination is, so you have to focus on where the AI is driving, except the AI occasionally doesn't even know where it wants to go half the time because it's constantly crashing into walls, traffic, and spinning out. And if you fall behind while the AI is eating crayons, then they will drive off, make fun of you, and you'll have to repeat the process all over again. If you're quick enough, you can catch back up to them, but sometimes you won't, especially early in the game where you have very slow cars. Once the nightmare is over, you get to the actual race, which is fine, and then you beat them, and they will give you their cell phone number, which you can use to begin head-to-head races to unlock better vehicles. Now, I had assumed that this was how you made progress in the career, but it wasn't until I had gotten all the cars from the rivals, realized nothing had changed, and then read the manual that I noticed that the races you need to do in the career can only be started through the drawn-out tailgating process I had described earlier. So I did that, and after a few races, the city champ, Kareem, had showed up. Just like the other rivals, you have to find Kareem out in the city and tailgate him, and oh man, it's so bad. I mean, his car is faster, yet somehow stupider and more reckless than the others, which makes it a chore to keep up with them. I mean, just look at this. To quote the great philosopher of our times, James Rolfe, what were they thinking? I mean, really, like, the chasing is really what kills this game for me. It's an interesting idea, but the execution is awful and too convoluted. And the reason why I know that this is a good idea is because it would become a mainstay in future games in the series. Instead of tailgating for an indiscriminate amount of time, you just flash your headlights to signal that you want to race. And you also get a little waypoint arrow. And you would also even get a slight bonus for beating the rivals to the destination. And really, it kinda sucks, because otherwise, this game it's alright. It's a little rough at the start when you have that god-awful taxi cab, but really starts feeling like a proper racing game when you get other cars. Races can be challenging, but aren't impossible and don't take a lot of effort to beat. And the game's also pretty generous about letting you restart if you screw up hard enough. If you had to pick one good racing game at launch day, I would have told you to just get Ridge Racer 5, but if that was out of stock, I guess Midnight Club would do. I guess that would be fine. It's better than Smugglers Run, that's for sure. Rockstar San Diego hasn't had much of the spotlight since Red Dead Redemption in 2010, and the Angel Studios name isn't something that many gamers recognize anymore, but their impact on the racing genre is undeniable, and I think the later Midnight Club games, especially Los Angeles, are unrivaled when it comes to the overall look, feel, and customizability that you can find in any open-world racer. And you wouldn't have had your Forza Horizons, your Need for Speed Underground 2s, The Crews, and plenty of other racing games if it weren't for these guys.